Yes. Hi guys, good morning. Welcome to the Spring Boot with MicroServices demo. So let me introduce myself. Okay, where it is. Yes. Morning. Hope I'm audible for everyone.
Yes, sir.
Naresh, can you confirm?
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So myself, Karthik. Let me write in a paintbrush. YS Calitra. Yes. Myself, Karthik. I think many of you know. Full stack students know is it. And having a 7+ years of experience with the entire experience in a full stack Java only. I'm a full stack Java developer, working candidate in one of the product based company. And out of my entire 7+ years experience, I almost have a 2.5 years of teaching experience, all in all full stack, entire full stack, like even including the Spring Boot, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React. Then this is all about me. This is all about entire about me. Coming to the course, this is a Spring Boot with microservices course. What you all need is the prerequisite to attend this course is you need at least core Java knowledge. At least core Java knowledge. In that core Java, definitely you should have a OOPS knowledge. OOPS knowledge is mandatory. What is abstraction, encapsulation, method overriding, overloading, and polymorphism, inheritance concepts, you must know it. Then after, at least if you have a inner classes knowledge also, that is more than enough. And if you have a collections knowledge also, collections exception handling knowledge also, that is more than enough. Exception handling. Okay, but if you know the technologies, Java technologies like JDBC plus servlet plus JSPs, if you know it, it would be added advantages to learn Spring Boot. It will be added advantage if you know JDBC, servlet, and JSPs. Okay, but you must to attend this course, you must know the at least OOPS. The minimum requirement is OOPS. You should know it. What is class? What is object? What is abstraction? What is encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism? Some inner classes. What is constructor, overriding? All these things you should know it. Okay, so if you have this technology knowledge, then that will be added advantage. So this is the prerequisite. Okay, then let's go into the Spring Boot with microservice course. So what is meant by Spring Boot? Why we need a Spring Boot? Where we are using a Spring Boot? In what are all the organizations? Popular organizations are using Spring Boot. All these things we'll discuss today, and like what we are going to get by the end of this course also we'll discuss. Spring Boot with microservice. So Spring Boot, this is the symbol of Spring Boot. This is Spring Boot, and you already know it. Java, it's a MySQL database, Postman. This is a IntelliJ IDE. This is a integrated development environment IDE. So what is meant by Spring Boot? First of all, so why it is so popular in a market? Why it is when Spring Boot is integrated with the Java, why it is so popular? So Spring Boot is a open source framework, Java open source framework, which is used to create a distributed and production ready Spring applications. I'm not telling Java applications, Spring applications. Why it is a Spring application? So Spring Boot is generally built on top of framework only, that is Spring framework only they have built on top of it. So Spring is a framework. On the top of a Spring framework, a team called Pivotal team has developed the Spring Boot framework. I can say Spring Boot is another way of writing a Spring application development. So then what is a Spring? Spring is also a framework which is built on top of a Java Java. So this is Spring. Spring is also a framework. Then who developed the Spring Boot? Spring was developed by a person called Rogers Johnson. But who developed the Spring Boot? Spring Boot, no, there is no one person who has developed the Spring Boot. A team called, a set of employee team called pivotal team. Pivotal team. So this team come forward and they have discovered the Spring Boot. How they have discovered the Spring Boots are based on the Spring. So whatever the drawbacks are present in a, whatever the drawbacks and whatever the boilerplate code, all this type of code is present in a Spring. So they have identified that boilerplate code and the drawbacks in a Spring. Then they came up with the Spring Boot. They came up with the Spring Boot approach. Spring Boot approach. It's another way of writing a web application or standalone applications. We can develop both web applications and as well as standalone applications with the Spring Boot. It's not like a only one application. You can develop anything. Sir, who are there in a pivotal team? It's not one person. Then there are a lot of employees from different companies, like from IBM, some Apache company, from different companies. Employees are get collaborated. Then they have developed this Spring Boot. Then when they developed the Spring Boot, it became a famous because of their advantages. A lot of advantages Spring Boot has it. Okay, then if you can ask, like, what is the latest versions? See, Java is the latest version. Almost 23 is going on. 22 has already released. 23 is also going to release 23. Then what is the latest version in Spring? Spring latest version is almost 6.x, 6.1.6, I think. So Spring 6.x is the latest version. Coming to the Spring Boot, the latest version for the Spring Boot is 3.x currently in the market. 3.3.2 is the current version, recent version. So it's going to be, they are going to be released version by version. Whatever the drawbacks are there, whatever the hotspots, security hotspots, any drawbacks are there in the previous release, they can rectify those issues and they can release the new release. For example, in the Spring Boot 3.x, they have made stable security. Security wise, they have made very stable. So they just deprecated the one of the popular class web security configure adapter, and they came up with the new annotations in Spring Boot 3.x. So like this, so continuously is pivotal team and a Spring framework is going to release a new versions to just to make the developer life very easy and convenient. Okay, so this is a Spring and Spring Boot. Spring is also a framework. So if you want a definition, Spring is open source, non-invasive dependency injection, Java based, some definition will be there, like Java based framework which can be used to develop the distributed web applications like that. So on top of a Spring framework, Spring Boot has developed. Spring Boot has developed by pivotal team. Then why it is so popular in the industry? At what time it became a popular? When combined with the Spring Boot with the microservice, why it became a popular? So Spring Boot is popular with his one of the main advantage feature is dependency injection. Dependency injection. Dependency injection is a concept of, it's like a injecting a dependent class object to the target class object, like injecting a engine class object to the car class. You may get it out, sir. This injecting a dependent class object to the target class, we already have a concept in a core Java that is We already have a concept. Has a relationship. As a relationship, we already have it. In a as a relationship, we have a aggregation and in a oops sir, in a aggregation and composition, we already have a two concepts which handles the dependent and target classes. Then why dependent? What is the special in the Spring Boot dependency injection? The special in the Spring Boot different dependency injection is in a here in a oops externally we need to set the dependent class object to the target class using a setter and getter methods. We need to set it using a setter methods. We need to developer needs to hand over manually. Whereas comes to Spring Boot, developer no need to do manually. Developer no need to do manually. So there will be a one automation process will be there. Container, there will be a one container will be there. That container, IOC container will be there. Inversion of control. So IOC container will be there. That container itself will take care of injecting a dependent objects to the target class objects. It only will take care of it. Is that only the advantage with the dependency injection? No, sir. It will maintain the that class, that life cycle of that bean as well. It will take care of it. Destroying and creating a object also it will take care of it. Destroying that object also it will take care of it. That IOC container only will take care of it. Then when I said a word called container, immediately you will get a doubt, sir. We already have a containers in a technologies, JDBC, and we have a containers in technologies like servlets and JSPs. Like servlet have a container called Catalina, and JSP have a container called Jasper, right? So is that containers cannot do the work which Spring is doing, this IOC container is doing? Because see, servlet container will maintain the servlet lifecycle objects, right? Servlet lifecycle, we have a do get do map post method, all these things. It will maintain it, right? Then why can't it can do? Yes, it may can do, but so these containers are bit heavy containers, and it won't support for some of the features like internalization. Some of the concept it won't support it. And especially when you are planning to work with the JSP servlets, this one, so these are tag based language technologies. Tag based Java server pages. JSP is a tag based, like there you need to write tags, tag lib, all these things you need to write it, which can which can take time to develop the application, and which very less debugging possibilities there. So that is why, to rectify all these issues, so people look for an alternative. Then they came for a Spring Boot, and in that Spring Boot, so all these issues can be rectified using a dependency injection. This is the very popular uh, feature of Spring Boot. Spring Boot means dependency injection. Then flexibility and scalability also we can achieve through the Spring Boot. What is the flexibility? Using a Spring Boot, you can develop a monolithic application. That means developing all the features in only one project. You can develop a monolithic application. You can develop a microservice application as well. If you develop a microservice application using a Spring Boot, you can scale it very easily. For example, you developed a Spring Boot application using a Spring Boot with microservice, you have developed it. Using a Spring Boot with microservice, you have developed, you have a e-commerce website. You have it. So this is a payment service. This is a some delivery service, delivery module. This is a payment module. This is a delivery module. This is in that payment module. This is a ICA. Let's say this is ICICI card payment module. This is a some HDFC card payment module. Then you are going to announce a big billion day. Then and you are going to put some lot of offers on a ICICI card. Then in that case, the customers will come and pay more with the do shopping with the ICICI card only. Then in that case, you need to scale up this one, right? This module. This microservice alone, you can scale up it. Alone, you can scale up it because there are a lot of offers on ICICI. You can scale up this microservices alone. You can increase the parts and you can do the load test. You can take, you can increase to whatever the extent you want. Then once the sale is completed, then reduce uh, reduce the scaling to normal. So like this, you can do it with the Spring Boot applications. Very scalable. Then next is transaction management. What is meant by transaction management? So transaction management, it is just a do everything or nothing. If everything is getting success, yes, everything getting okay, then do the transaction, complete the transaction, commit the transaction. If something is goes wrong, then roll back it, then roll back everything. So Java Spring Boot will provide a strong transaction management. How strong it is, you can directly connect to the two databases with this Spring Boot with the one application. With one application, you can directly connect to the two databases using a Java transaction API. And Spring Boot is a bit fast also, yes. So Spring Boot will support the asynchronous programming as well. So based on the asynchronous programming, what Java has introduced in a Java 8. So Java 8 asynchronous programming is meant for asynchronous programming. Completable stage, completable feature has introduced in a Java 8. Very powerful. Based on this completable feature and completion stage, completable feature is a class, completion stage is a interface. So based on these synchronous classes and interfaces, Spring Boot has introduced reactive streams. Spring Boot has implementing the reactive streams called Spring Boot Reactive Programming, Webflux. Webflux. It is Webflux as it has provided implementation to the reactive streams through the Webflux. Webflux. So in the Webflux, asynchronous programming will be happen asynchronously. For example, let me give an idea about this Webflux. So for example, you are hitting a database, and you are from your application, you are hitting a database. So whenever you just do, you want to fetch any data, like you want to fetch 10,000 records from the database. Okay, then in that case, what happens? First 10,000 results will be, query will be executed in the database side. 10,000 results will come and store in the result set. From the result set, we will get it back. Right? That means until the 10,000 records are processed, we are been waiting. We are waiting, right? The application is waiting. But in a reactive programming, it will not be like that. First one record as processed now, then publisher will send it to the program. Second data is processed now, then it will send it to the application. Third is processed now, then it will send it. Like that. So how many records are completed, it will try to send it immediately. It won't, will be in a waiting stage. There here, publisher one person will be there. It is called publisher. Publisher will be there. Then here, subscriber will be there. Whenever the subscriber subscribes the publisher, then data will be flowed to the publisher to subscriber. So this type of programming Spring Boot is supporting. And not only this one, Spring Boot is supporting asynchronous. Let's say I don't want to execute my entire program in a asynchronously. I just want to execute my program. One of my method only execute asynchronously. Yes, you can do it. Only one method only should execute asynchronously. Yes, at that time also some annotations are there. With that annotations, you can achieve it. That's why Spring Boot is a bit faster. And security, obviously Java provides a more security than when compared to others. Then Spring Boot also will provide more security like authentication, authorization, and JWT, JSON Web Tokens. All this there All these features Spring Boot is supporting, and which is making the application as more secure, more secure. And if you go any organizations or anywhere, so cloud compatibility with the Spring Boot is very, very feasible. Any organization, some of the organizations are, if it is a Spring Boot application, they are using, mostly they are using Kubernetes. This is the latest one. They are using Kubernetes to deploy it. Kubernetes containers we are deploying, using it. Because Spring Boot is very compatible with the Kubernetes, Docker, as well as AWS as well. So with this, still more advantages are there. But these are the main advantages. With this, we can say yes, Spring Boot is very important and very popular in the industry like that. Okay, so this one, sir. Currently, what are all the organizations, popular organizations, they are using it? So large e-commerce applications also using, for example, Alibaba.com is using a Spring Boot only, like live streaming gaming platforms also using, like Netflix, Spotify also using, and Amazon Web Services. Some of the services in a web service, AWS also developed on a Spring Boot, and telecommunication industry, and even in a banking sector also we are using a Spring Boot very, very rapidly. We are using it. Very rapidly we are using it because of Netflix. You can go and search in a Netflix. Why Netflix is using a Spring Boot, sir? You know, Netflix has developed a one of the one of the core registry in a Spring Boot as well. Not only Netflix is using it, Netflix is already developing the Spring Boot. It is trying to enhance the Spring Boot, like Netflix Eureka, Netflix API gateway has introduced Netflix API Zool API. So lot of bigger organizations still using a Spring Boot. If you want a Spring Y Spring Docs, you can go and you can check from there itself. You can go and you can check it. So this is the official website, Spring. So where they are using it, all these things they will tell here. Yes, see here, including Alibaba, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and more big names in tech, including this. So these and all are organizations using Spring Boot and Spring. Spring in the sense it's Spring Boot only. Like, on top of it only it developed now. So like this. So then when we are adding Spring Boot with the microservice, when it became a popular in the industry, when it became a, so when agile methodology and cloud computing has become a popular in an industry, then Spring Boot with developing a Spring Boot with the microservices architecture is became it popular. Like you already knows it, you might have knows like agile development. That is agile development, agile process. It's a methodology. So two methodologies will be there, waterfall and agile. So in that, agile methodology is a more efficient in the nowadays, like continuous development and continuous deployment, continuous development, and take that continuous development into the production like that. So when it became a popular from when cloud computing and the agile development as practices as implemented, then from that onwards, developing a Spring Boot in a microservices architecture became a famous. And so nowadays, whatever the whatever the enhancement projects are there, or scratch projects are there, they are going to develop in a Spring Boot only. Spring Boot. Then in a Spring Boot, do we have any modules? There are a lot of modules are there in a Spring Boot, but out of those modules, we are going to see these many modules. In in that, the first and very important module is Spring Boot Core. To learn any module, either it may be a data JPA, AOP, any module, MVC or batch or REST, anything, you must know Spring Boot Core module. You must know the you should know the Spring Boot core module. Then only you can do it. What we are going to what we are going to see in a Spring Boot core module. In a Spring Boot core module, first we are going to see what is dependency injection, what is dependency injection, how dependency injection is implemented through the IOC container, inversion of control container. Then how many types of IOC containers are there? We have a two types of containers like bean factory container, application context container. What is the type of containers are there? And what is the difference between bean factory container and application context container? So generally in our, yes, sir, we are going to see. So generally, almost in a all Spring Boot applications, we are going to use application context container only because of its advantages. Application context container in all the applications. See, if you want here also, this is a Spring Boot main application. In a Spring Boot, you don't need to create a, you don't need to externally create a container. It only will create it. See, implementation here somewhere, yes, here only. Then go and it only internally creating a application context container. Yes, here only, yes. It is creating a internally application context container. Configurable application context is a just implementation the child interface of application context interface. Child interface of application context interface. Spring Boot only will do it. But mostly we are going to use application context only, even in your organization also. If you are a working candidate in your work organization as well, you are using internally this container only, application context container. Then after the types of containers, we are going to see what are the bean scopes. Sorry, types of injections we are going to see, types of injections. So how many types of injections are there? Like setter injection and constructor injection. Setter injection, constructor injection we are going to see, and interface injection, field injection, this type of injections we are going to see, method injection. Then most of the, so while we are injecting, most of the persons will do at the rate auto void. But at the rate auto void, internally, which injection it can do use? Will it use a setter injection or will it use a constructor injection? This is a famous interview question, sir. So at the rate auto void can use which type of injection? Will that use a setter injection or will that use a constructor injection? So the answer is it depends on three factors, that is by name, by type, and by constructor. Okay, so that also we are going to see in a core module only. Then after we'll see the bean scopes. What are the bean scopes of a Spring Bean? Like scopes are 5 scopes are there, like singleton, prototype, request, session, and application scopes are there. WebSocket scope also there, but it got deprecated in a Spring 4.x. It got deprecated, so no need to discuss about the WebSocket. So 5 scopes are there. Those are singleton scope, prototype, singleton, prototype, request, session, application scopes. Then after, also very important topic, we are going to see this life cycle methods. Life cycle methods. If you are working in a Spring Boot project, you might have know at the rate post construct, at the rate pre destroy. This annotation, these methods annotated, some methods annotated with these annotations you might have observed. So these are the life cycle methods. If you declare these annotations on the top of any method, those methods are called as life cycle methods. Spring Boot life cycle. Once this Spring Boot life cycle completed, methods completed, we'll go for a another module, or we'll go for a Spring Boot schedulers as well. We will discuss here schedulers. Like if you want to execute some task at certain intervals, then we will go for a Spring Boot schedulers concept. You can schedule saying this task should happen every 5,000 milliseconds, every 10,000 milliseconds, like that. You can schedule it. Any job you can schedule it. That we are going to see it. Then we'll next module we will see the Spring Boot data JPA. Data JPA. So why Spring Boot data JPA into come into picture is you already know if you know the JDBC to work with the JDBC to connect to the database, first you need to create a connection object, then after you need to create a statement object, then after you need to execute that, then after you need to bring take it to the result set. From that result set you need to extract it. These many operations you need to do for every application, but 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 if you work with the Spring Boot data JPA, no need to create all these things. Sir, to overcome this issue, industry is moved to Hibernate. Industry is moved to Hibernate. But in a Hibernate as well, we need to create a Hibernate configuration file. Hibernate XML file, we need to write it. Configure Hibernate configuration file. Then after configuration object, we need to create it. Then after session factory object, we need to create it. Then after session object, we need to create it. So this is again became a same like more or less became like a JDBC. Then again industry moved to Spring Boot data JPA, where you no need to do anything, nothing. There will be a 3 predefined interfaces will be there: crude repository, then JPA repository, then paging and sorting repository will be there. So it only will give the predefined methods. You no need to create any objects. You no need to create any object. It's like okay, yes, it's like a see. I will show you. You no need to nothing. You no need to do it. See, you just create a interface by extending from a JPA interface. That's it. JPA repository. You no need to do any. No need to do any configurations. Nothing. Just give a database credentials in a resources file. That's it. Just give a database response. That's it. So it only will take care of it. Spring Boot data JPA and it only will take care of it. If you just declare interface by extending from JPA repository in a runtime, it will create a implementation class to this repository. Then it only will provide the implementation to that methods, and it only will execute the query. It only will get it. So that much feasible this Spring Boot data JPA. And nowadays whatever the applications are migrating from the legacy systems, they were using Spring Boot data JPA, sir. Widely became a very famous Spring Boot data JPA. It only will take care of it. See how much work it is reducing. Here we need to create these many connection object, this much work we need to do it, and that too working with the XMLs is a huge task. But here no need. Then Spring Boot data JPA will provide a support a best association mapping as well, like one-to-one mapping, one-to-many mapping. So this and all one-to-many and many-to-one. So it will provide a best association mapping. That also we will see in our both direction, unidirectional and bidirectional. We will see in this course. Then after we are going to see in the Spring Boot data JPA only. Spring Boot data JPA will support HQL Hibernate query language. It will support it. Why this Hibernate HQL bit important, see this HQL will allow us to write the queries in a database independent manner. If you write a HQL query in any application, then after that, after few years, if you can change the database instead of Oracle, if you can use a MySQL also, you no need to change the query, because database independent queries we can write through the HQL Hibernate query language. Database independent queries we can write it through the HQL. Then after HQL Spring Boot data JPA will support native queries as well. So these two topics, these three topics are from Hibernate only. Since these are very best topics in a Hibernate. They just don't want to lose in a Spring Boot data JPA. That's why Spring Boot data JPA is also supporting this too. Okay, so native queries as well, we will do it. We'll work on it here. Then once the Spring Boot data JPA completes, we'll go for a AOP, aspect oriented programming structure, where it is a programming paradigm, where it allows us to separate the separate the allow us to separate the cross-cutting logics. What is meant by cross-cutting logics? Like whenever we are writing any business logic, some business logic like you are writing to generate a credit card bill, you are writing some business logic. So on that business logic, you will write a logger statements, you will write a security, okay, you will write a transaction management, this type of things you will write it. All these things you will write it. But if you can use the Spring Boot AOP, you no need to write these three security logging and transaction management in between the business logic. You no need to write it. You just write somewhere, and that will be applicable to every application. You just a developer just concentrate on a business logic. That's it. Developer just concentrate on a business logic. Like only you just develop any microservices. Any microservices you just develop it. So for all these microservices, cross-cutting concerns will be applicable if you develop it. There are in a AOP, there are a lot of annotations were there at the rate around, at the rate aspect, at the rate join point, at the rate point cut. These are all there. That also we are going to see. And as I said, Spring Boot provides a best transaction management. Spring Boot provides best transaction management. There is a only one annotation will be there. It will take care of the transaction management. So transaction management is missing in a data GP, missing in a small plain JDBC. But transaction management is provided in a Hibernate. When compared to the Hibernate, best transaction management, a Spring Boot data GPA can be provided. Just you no need to begin the transaction. Like in Hibernate, you need to write transaction dot begin transaction. Like that, you need to stop it, transaction dot close. All these things you need to do. But in a Spring Boot data JPA, you no need to do it. In a Spring Boot transaction management, you no need to do that. So you just write a at the rate transactional annotation on a top of a method. Wherever you are doing just um, updates operation or any insert operation, anything, then just write at the rate transactional annotation. It only will take care of it. And using a at the rate transaction, using a Spring Boot transaction management, you can connect to the two databases at a time. So this is a famous interview question as well for a 2 years or 3 years interview persons. So how can we connect multiple databases with the Spring Boot application? Yes, we can connect. Yes, we can connect using a um, distributed transaction using Java transaction API. Java transaction API, you can connect to the multiple databases, no problem. That also we are going to see in a transaction management module. This one. Then Spring Boot MVC, you already knows it. MVC, most of the people knows, working candidates knows it, like MVC, model view controller. Model view controller. So every application, it will be in a MVC architecture only. MVC, first request will come to controller, request controller will give that request to the service class will add some business logic, whatever the business logic service want to add it, that business logic service class can add it, then service class can give it to the DAO class, then DAO class can have a logic to interact with the database, then DAO class will connect to the database, databases. It connects to the databases. DAO class can connect to the database, and DAO class only will have a database logic, only it will have it. So this is a MVC architecture. Here some helper classes will be there. Pojo classes we can call it, plain object Java. Pojo classes will be there. And domain Pojo classes are domain classes will be there. And here entity classes will be there. Entity classes. The classes which are persistable, classes which are going to store in a database is called as entity classes or entity classes we can call. Or BO business classes also we can call. So everything in a MVC architecture we will develop, but in a MVC, their different flow will be different. Like one front controller will be there, front controller will be there. In a Spring Boot MVC, front dispatcher servlet will act as a front controller. This front controller only will take care of everything. Will take care of everything. This front controller only will take care of everything. Basically, this front controller is a one design pattern. So dispatcher servlet will act as a front controller, and it will give the request to the controller based by using some handler mappings. Using some handler mapping, but those handler mappings are pre-configured in a Spring Boot, auto configured in a Spring Boot. You no need to write anything. Spring Boot only will configure it. Spring Boot only configure it. So that is your handler mappings are pre-configured in Spring Boot. Then in a Spring MVC, first one we will see is like Spring MVC flow is very, very important. As a interview purpose, as a developer, you should know definitely Spring Boot flow, MVC flow, how request comes to dispatcher servlet, how dispatcher servlet will give that request to the controller, how it will take the request, how it will take the response back to the user. All these things you need to know. That one. Then lot of annotations are there. At the rate controller annotations, at the rate request body, at the rate HTTP method annotations are there. All these things we are going to see in a view resolvers also there. So all these things we are going to see in a Spring Boot MVC. Yeah, after Spring Boot MVC, we will discuss about time leaf as well. Time leaf. So one of the main, see earlier instead of time leaf, they used to JSP used to use as a view layer. JSP can be used as a view layer. But so since JSP is bit heavy because Jasper container is there, and we to use the tag based one. So tag based language technology we need to know. Then instead of it, industry came to the time leaf. Time leaf is just looks like a HTML only. It is also looks like HTML, but a dynamic HTML. HTML is a static, but it can do the dynamic things as well. Time leaf. Using a time leaf, we will develop one mini project after the Spring Boot MVC. Mini project we will develop using time leaf. Like doing we can use a one to many or many to one any application as a backend, and we will use the front end as a time leaf. We will develop one mini project using COD operations. We will develop it using any mini project. We can do it. Once the Spring Boot MVC completes, we will go for a Spring Boot REST, representational state transfer, Spring Boot REST. So this is a widely REST-based applications widely using in any other organizations. Like if you want to integrate your services, your microservices with the front-end services, mostly organizations are using this Spring Boot REST only. Easily we can integrate with the other front-end technologies like React, Angular, something. Easily we can integrate it. Even Spring Boot REST also, we have a lot of annotations at the rate REST controller, response body, all this there that we are going to discuss. And so the Spring Boot REST applications can be tested with the Postman. We can test with the Postman. We can test with the Swagger tool as well. Swagger as well, you can test it. Swagger. To work with the Swagger, we just need to do small. We just need to write one class. That's it. So if you write a one class, then Swagger tool also will work. You can test it with the Swagger tool as well. Then next we'll see about security. So security, as I said, what is authorization, what is authentication, what is the difference between those two, and how JWT will work, JSON Web Token will work. It is a stateless authentication. JWT token, stateless authentication. How we can do Spring Boot support the JWT token. This also we'll see in a security. Then coming to the security in a 3.x, some different changes has happened. Earlier it was web security configurer adapter class is there. Web security configurer adapter class is there. There we need to override some methods. But now this entire class has removed. Entire class has just removed. Why they have just removed? It is they just thought it is making a application as a invasive. That's why non-invasive making it. That's why they removed it. They removed it and they came up with a new concept and annotations. They came up with at the rate enable web security, some annotations and security servlet security filters, some classes they came up, and then with that we can achieve the security. Okay, then after that we will see the Spring Boot batch and reactive programming. This reactive programming introduction we will be giving. So this is a big topic again. Say there mono flux will come into picture. Mono and flux as a um, publishers, and other will be in um, subscribers will be like flat map. All these things will become. So this we are going to see as batch. Also we are going to see like how to uh, uh, process the large files, large volume files. How to process it, we'll see. Then Spring Boot also provides a best error handling, global error handling. It will provide it using a at the rate controller advice and using a at the rate exception handling. So by default, Spring Boot DAO layer will propagate the exception to service. Service will propagate the exception to controller. Once the exception came into the controller, you can caught using a global exceptions using a at the rate controller advice. Here I just added a snippet like this. You can add it like this. You can do it like this. You can do it at the rate controller advice at the rate exception handling. These methods. See here, I just used employee not found exception, global exception. You can do it. If you want to do some asynchronous programming only applicable for a methods, that also you can do it like this. Not for entire application, only for a methods. See here, task executor. There is a class called a task executor, which is extending from the task executor, which is extending from the executor interface. So you already know it. Executor interface is a Java 1.5 version multi-threaded interface, which can allow us to work with the multi-threading executor. This executor interface is for this executor interface, child interface is executor service interface. Executor service internally uses the thread groups, thread pool concepts, and it will create a threads, multiple threads. Here, observe carefully here, functional interface. This a task executor is a functional interface. Functional interface means single abstract method. Yes, single abstract method, which is taking a one runnable as a parameter. This runnable as well, functional interface again, like this. So using, you can execute any method with the different threads as well. Whatever, to what extent, how many threads you want, you can specify that as well using a Spring Boot. Like see here, core pool size I'm giving 32 threads, maximum is we are giving 64. Like that you can give it, no issues. But while you are working, then you need to, which method to be executed asynchronously, you need to mention that method as a at the rate async annotation, which will return the completable feature. Inside a completable feature, we have a lot of methods. Then apply then apply run async, This type of methods, lot of methods are there. So all these things we can do it. We can apply it. Completed feature. See here we are just completing the feature using a completed feature method. Lot of methods are there inside a completable feature. Those and all we will see in a asynchronous Spring Boot programming. So these are I just written some of the annotations what we are going to work. So you might have seen these annotations, right? These are the annotations which introduced in the 3.x Spring. So conditional based on if you just mention any class as a component, Spring Boot will Spring or Spring Boot will IOC container will create an object na. So but I don't want by default. I want based on some conditional. In that cases, you can use a conditional annotation. Conditional on bean, conditional on property. That means if that property is present, then only create an object. If not, don't create it. Unnecessarily, you can create it like that. So conditional basis, a container can create objects to the Spring Bean. That we also seen in a, we can also see. See here, a lot of annotations are there. One to many, entity, ID, JSON property, this and all. So qualifier, primary, bean, order, aspect point, all this is also we can see. So while we are doing some practices, we will see. So there is no need of uh, no need of this explaining these annotations. Particularly, you will when you are doing a practice, you'll understand that you will be habituated by doing a practicals. Okay, so lot of these are main annotations. These are the 4 main annotations. So all these annotations you will be habituated. No need to remember anything. It will be there in your mind because that many examples you are going to do with these annotations. Okay, this is all about Spring Boot. When we try to integrate with Spring Boot with a microservice, first, what is meant by microservice? What is meant by microservice? So generally this microservice is an architecture, sir. It is an architecture. It's not a development. It is an architecture. Okay. It is an architecture. So according to this architecture, we can develop the each module as a one project. Let's say we have one bank application. Let's say we have one bank application. Bank application can have a different type of modules. We will have it like deposit module, loan module, loan module, then we will have a insurance module, then we will have a credit card module, then we will have a debit card module, then we will have a account service modules. So develop each module as a one project, develop each module as a one project, and integrate this each module into one project at last. One project at last is a concept of microservices. So that parallel development is possible. So that parallel development is possible. Like one person is working on a deposit service, another person will work on a loan service, one other team will work on a credit card service, another person will work on a debit card service, like that. So this is a microservice. So lot of advantages are there. We can do it. See, scalability, as I said, if you want to increase only, if you want to scale up any only particular microservice, you can scale up it. So you are getting a more hits or more traffic to the loan service microservice, then increase this scale up this loan service alone, scale up it, no problem. Easily you can scale up it. You no need to spend entire money on all the projects. You can scale up only one microservice. Then resilience. Let's say when there is an issue in one microservice, let's say this microservice is all these microservices connecting it now. Okay, so communicating each other. Let's say there is an issue in a one microservice. If this one issue in my one microservice, all microservices will be failed because exception is coming in a loan microservice and further will terminate abnormally. But Spring Boot with microservice, Spring Cloud will provide the implementation for this microservice. So Spring Boot with this microservice, Spring Cloud is more resilient. That means if any microservice is down now, immediately fallback method will be executed and we will show some immediately fallback methods will be executed and we will show some error message, normal error message. We will show like we are facing some issues at this moment, or like please try again later. This type of user friendly messages we will show it. We should not show any technical message to the user. So this is more resilient and continuous development and continuous deployment also. Yes, you have completed the developing of this deposit modular. Yes, you can develop it and you can take it to the production deployment. You can do it. And if there is any enhancement in the future releases, we can do it. Any enhancement we can do in the future releases. That also. Then API driven communication. See, all these microservices, basically in a microservice architecture, API gateway will be there. So this API gateway will act as a single entry point for a request. So any requests are coming from any number of customers, any requests are coming, first it will come to API gateway, and API gateway will decide to which microservice the request to be sent. If the request is coming to deposit, then it will send it to this one. If the request is coming to loan, it will send it to here, like this. So then once it request some sends to the deposit microservice will process the request, then it will give the response. That response also will be sent from the API gateway only. That means one entry and one exit, one entry point and an exit point. See here, this is the API gateway. From the reactive application, request is coming to API gateway. Here three microservices we have. One is employee, department, organization. So all these microservices are connecting to the database. It can connect to the one database or it can connect to the multiple databases, no issues. So API gateway will give the responses like this. So to communicate this each other, all these microservices to communicate, we must need to register this microservices in a registry called service registry called Eureka server, or any registry we can register it in a microservice architecture. We need to register here in a service registry. We need to register it. Whenever a employee service wants to communicate the department service now, then it will go and it will get the object department object from the service registry, and it will call the department service. Registration we need to do it. Service registry. So how we can register it is, so we have a Netflix Eureka server. Netflix Eureka server, we have it. In the Eureka server, if you can register the microservices, then it can be available to all microservices. Anyone wants to communicate with that microservice now, you can communicate it. So how to register is, there are some annotations are there. There are some URLs are there. How to register it? All these things we can do it. This is a service registry. So as of now, Spring Cloud Netflix Eureka server is bit famous one. Netflix Eureka server. So there will not be much coding, sir. There will not be much coding. Only annotations and way of approach is different. That's it. But it's almost Spring Boot application only. It's almost Spring Boot application. 60%, 70% Spring Boot application only. Just you will write some annotations. That's it. Then here, what is this config server, sir? Let's say employee service is using some configuration properties. Department service is using configuration properties, and organization also using configuration properties. All these properties, whatever it is using, all are common. Then why to write 3 times in a 3 microservices? Just configure those 3 configurations in a config server. Generally, we can use it as a GitHub as well. Configure it from the config server and read it from the repo. Read it from the repo in a runtime. No issues. You can directly configure it. You can read it. Then this is what is this, sir? Sleuth, Zipkin sleuth. Generally, whenever you have written a log statements for logging, if you write any log statements, for example, I want to know what happening in the application. So generally, you will write a log statement using a log4j. Those things will be printed in a log4 file. If you given a log file, appender in a log4j, it will print all the log statements in a file. But I don't want to use that. I want to use that um, very good UI. I want to see that logs in a UI. So you can use either Sleuth or you can use ELK stack Kibana as well. Logstash Kibana as well. You can use it. No problem. No problem. So that also this microservice can support it. Spring Cloud comes with the inbuilt. It comes with the inbuilt, inbuilt SLF4j. You no need to add any uh, uh, dependencies or anything. No need to do. So this is the registration. See, there I told you right how a microservice can communicate with another microservice. This is a one microservice. This is a one microservice. How both can communicate each other. Yes, three ways it can be communicate each other. Using a REST template, it can communicate. Using a web client, it can communicate. Using a open fin client also it can communicate it. This fin client using a fin client and web client is recommended. Web client mostly we can use in a asynchronous programming. Mostly we are using this web client only, and very less fin client and REST template. In olden days, REST template we used to do, like in a REST template we have a lot of methods like get for object, post for object. This type of things are there. Yes, REST template. Yes, see here we have a lot of object, get for object, get for post for object. If you want to get endpoint, you can call get for object. You want to call post endpoint of another microservice, you can use post for object. You can use it, but so recommended is web client and fin client. So in using this, you can do the microservice communication. It's already these two microservices already registered. If you can register the two microservices, then only you can communicate with each other. If you are not registering in a microservice, it's not recommended to do it. So this one config server, as I said, right? Common services, common properties you can configure in a cloud using any GitHub, anywhere single release store. You can store it and you can use it. No need of writing multiple times. So yeah, this is a very important circuit breaker. I told you, right, resilient. Why Spring Boot microservice, Spring Cloud is resilient. So if any microservice is continuously throwing exceptions, then to avoid the execution of actual logic for some time and to provide some dummy responses like service not working, unable to process, this type of thing, we will use circuit breaker. We will use circuit breaker. This circuit breaker can be implemented using a fallback methods. On the top of fallback methods, if we can use a small annotations like @enable strict or strict command, then that will be enough. That will be enough. So microservice is not yet coding. It's just architecture. There, Spring Cloud will provide some annotations. That's it. It's other than that, it is same as a Spring Boot. Other than that, it's same as a Spring Boot. You need to do just annotations, and you need to do some configurations in a YAML file. That's it. This is this is this is a distributed distributed tracing. I told you, right, this one, Sleuth and Zipkin, distributed tracing. Sleuth and Zipkin. In a distributed tracing, so we will get the logger statements, all the logger statements in a either in a Zipkin or in a ELK stack. We can record it, like what happening in the application. Let's say some bug came in a production bug came. What happening? How to trace that? All these things we can trace it using a distributed tracing using this one, Zipkin and ELK stack. Distributed tracing. So API gateway, I told you, right? This is a single entry point, single exit point for all the microservices. All the microservices, this is a single entry and exit. See, this is a single entry and exit. Okay, so this API gateway, this is a so to do API gateway. So we have a Zool proxy, Netflix Zool proxy. Netflix Zool is the API gateway. Spring Cloud API gateway is the Netflix API gateway as well there. So Netflix API gateway we will use. Netflix Zool we will use it. Netflix Zool. So there we need to use some annotations. These annotations we need to use it at the rate enable Zool proxy. Then we need to do some configuration changes. Then it will be sufficient to make it as a API gateway. This is also a one microservice. This is a one project, small microservice only. Okay, so this one. So these are the common annotations in a microservice. At the rate enable Eureka client, at the rate enable Flynn clients, at the rate circuit breaker, at the rate enable config server, Zool proxy, Fin client, history. Sir, Spring Boot provides actuators as well. Actuators, the best actuators Spring Boot will provide it. So through the actuators, we can know the health of a application. For example, in my organization only, like whenever any application is continuously throwing any issues, then immediately what I can do, first I can do the actuator. I will check the health only. I will check the health. Is that microservice health is up or down? Up or down? First thing in any developer, first thing will do this only. Is that if the service is down, first you will check what is the state health of that application. Through the actuator only they will check it. So the actuator, one dashboard will be open. The dashboard, it will show. In the dashboard it will show health is down, like that it will show. Health is down, like that it will show. Okay, so like this one, sir. Sorry, what happened? Like this it will be there. So this is the official diagram of this one from spring.io. The official document for a Spring is spring.io. For a Spring Boot, if you want, start.spring.io. From here as well, you can get it. From here as well, you can get it. The documentation here as well, you can get it. You can get it from here as well, but you can create an application through the start.spring.io. This is a official website. Spring Boot docs, you can get it. Learning always with the docs is best, sir. Because if tomorrow new enhancements comes, you no need to go for others and ask. You can directly get it from there. Documentation. Okay, so this is the one. Then this is asynchronous programming using a Kafka messaging queues, any messaging queue, whether it may be a Kafka or any Apache Kafka or RabbitMQ. So if time permits, I'm going to teach this Apache Kafka with our RabbitMQ. Any one of it will use it. Mostly Apache Kafka with Spring Boot integration, not Apache Kafka entire topics. Spring Boot integration with Apache Kafka, we may get it, which will give the synchronous programming. Yeah, Kafka is a bit famous, sir. Even RabbitMQ also nowadays becoming messaging queues. RabbitMQ also becoming famous. But Kafka, bit I know, so that's why again I'm familiar with Kafka. Okay, so this is the one. This is the one we are going to see. This is the topics. These are all the topics we are going to see in a Spring Boot with microservice ports, and notes will be provided like this. So this is the notes. Okay, so every day notes will be provided with along with the. It's not full, I think. Still notes is there. Every day notes will be provided. You no need to write anything. No need to write anything. So this is the one. And let me tell. Like this is the one. So along with that, I think 5 more classes you can listen as a demos. It is just a demo. From next class onwards, a real class sessions will happen. Like first we'll start a Spring. We'll start with the Spring. One application we will do in a Spring. One application we will develop in a Spring. One application only. Then that application will convert into Spring Boot. Then you will understand what is the drawbacks in a Spring. You will understand clearly. What is the drawbacks in a Spring? You will understand clearly. And what is the differences between a Spring and Spring Boot? Very famous interview question. You will, after doing this application, you only will tell, these are the differences. These are differences. In a Spring, there is no embedded server. In a Spring, there is no embedded H2 database. Like that, you will tell. In a Spring, there is no auto configuration. In a Spring, manually, we need to add the dependencies. But in a Spring Boot, no need. Everything will come. So rapid development, application development will happen, sir. RAD. So if you can read the definition of a Spring Boot from the document, Spring Boot are RAD applications, rapid application development process. Rapid application development. So if I teach one Spring application and if I convert that application into Spring Boot, small one only, then you will come to know everything. What is the differences are everything. Okay. And 5 more classes will be available. You can join and you can listen. Then after you can decide it. No issues. And the time slots will be morning 7:30 a.m. to or 9:30 morning 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. anytime, anything is fine, or evening 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. is also fine. Sorry, if it is 8:30 or 8:15, it's fine. For me, it's fine. In between, not fine, sir. Office will be there. No, it's not possible. Okay. Then regularly videos will be uploaded to the drive. Videos and notes will be uploaded to the drive like this. See here, like this. Yeah, full stack. For full stack people like this, we are going to upload like this. So regularly videos and documents will be uploaded, added to that. Then there will be a lot. You may ask, like, what are the add-ons will be there? Add-ons. Lot of add-ons will be there. So first add-on will be tools will be there, sir. Tools. Very, very important to become a Java developer is tools. What are all the tools we are going to teach is Maven tool. Build tool is a Maven tool. Then JUnits. Unit testing, doing a unit testing for a whatever the application you have written, that is JUnit. Then JMeter. Load test, sir. Load test. Load test. So if you can tell this how JMeter has helped me last week is in my portfolio, one of the application is keep on throwing an array index of out of bound exception. So when I'm hitting it when I ask my team to hit and fix it, they are unable to replicate it. So they're just hitting it from the postman, but still the error is not replicating in a local. If not replicating in a local, then how can I fix it? No. Then immediately what we did is we thought, array, it's not working fine. So how to implement it, how to replicate it in a local. Then so in what scenarios it is throwing errors, so out of 100 requests it is throwing errors for 3 requests. Out of 100, 3 requests it is throwing errors. But if it is a one error also error, immediately we need to fix it. Then what we did it, so from the postman I can't give 100 hits at a time. Then we have used a JMeter. At a time I have given 200 hits. 200 hits I have given. That means 20 threads I have opened, 20 loops I have 20 threads I have opened, and 10 loops I have done. 200 hits I have given. Then when I give a 200 hits, almost at a time, almost 10 hits are failed. 10 to 20 hits are failed. Then we caught that issue and then we fixed it. That much important this JMeter is. Okay, so the JMeter. Then after we will see Git as well. Then we will see Sonar as well. But these tools will be separate. Every free workshops will be happen. Every or alternative. Every free workshop will be done every week, Saturday or Sunday, alternative Saturday or alternative Sunday. So this is separate 2 hours session or 2.5 hours session. Don't combine these tools with the sessions with the uh, course. Tools will be add-ons. It's a free for all. Okay. So if you are interested, you can join and you can learn it. But I can say if you know the tools, then only then they will think you are an experienced candidate in a Java, like that. Okay. If once the tools completed, if you need, sir, I am bit very poor at we are bit lagging at advanced loops topics and advanced multi-threading topics like executable framework and completable future object. This and all we are not that much fluent, sir. Yes, free workshops will be conducted, but once completed after completion of tools can completed, or you can, if you needed, sir, this topic is I'm not much familiar. Let's suppose multi-threading topic is not, you are not good at multi-threading topic, then you can join the, you no need to wait for a workshop. You can join the um, full stack course. In a full stack, still multi-threading is not completed. You can join there and you can listen. No issue. You can join there and you can listen. Let's say you are not that much familiar with the exception handling. So next exception handling is going to be happen for a full stack students. Then you can join there. No problem. Tools and this one, no problems. Okay. Then, sir, I'm working for I'm looking for a job change. If you are a working candidate and if you are looking for a job change, or if you are shifting from non-IT to IT, I want some mock interviews. Yes, we can take it. Yes, you can take it. But all you need is you need to book the slot on for Saturday. For slots, for a Saturday slot, you need to tell, sir, I need afternoon 1 to 2. I need you to take mock interviews, mock interview for us, like that. So as, as I am a interviewer panel member in my portfolio, then I can take any number of interviews, sir. I can take any number of, I know what are all the interview questions to ask for a 5 years guy. I know what are all the interview questions you need to ask for a 3 years guy. How interview questions will be, all these things I know. Then I can take a mock interviews as well. You can book a slots, that's it. But you need to inform before 2 days or 3 days. You need to inform, sir, we need a mock interview at this time. Then career guidance will be there, sir. Guidance like, sir, I got a job in this company. Is that good company? I got a job in this uh, organization, and I'm planning to move from testing to Java side. I'm planning to, I just done up to 2 years. I worked in some other technology. Now I'm planning to move to Java. Then how can I learn? How can I get it? All these things. This type of career guidance, you can ask not only today. You can ask not only today, even after course completion as well. Since if you are registered, then you can ask, no problem. Because it is just a word now, we can help. It is just a word now, we can help. We will not charge anything. Free career guidance. Free career guidance. Or without guidance, a lot of people are going here and there. They are paying money, all these things. So that's why we came up with this concept. That's why we came up with this career guidance. Then, sir, here this one is very, very highlight. You may get, when you are practicing anything, if you get a doubt, immediately you can ping in the WhatsApp group, where I also will be available, and some of the trainers also will be available. They can immediately answer your questions. If time permits, they can connect the WebEx as well. Immediately they can answer. You no need to wait for the next class. Sir, what is happening? I just stuck here, like that. You no need to wait. You can directly get it. Okay, this one. And if any referrals in our radar, I'm not telling we can definitely will give a job. We're not telling that false statements. If any referrals in our radar, sorry, so we can give a reference as well. If you are practicing well and if you are doing everything perfect, then we can do. We can referrals also we can do. Referrals also we can do. We can if it is come to our radar. Like if my one of my company friend company, if opening is there, then we can refer that one, like that. Or not only friend company, like sir, there are 2 years openings, 3 years openings are there in a some other company, but I came to know that there is a 3 years opening is there. Then in that cases as well, I can recommend, I can tell you to apply for that one, and I can suggest you like how to prepare for that interview, how to prepare for that interview. Okay, then this one. Sir, some of the people I came to know, some of the students will ask for a real-time project. Once this course completed, real-time course also will start. Real-time project course also will start. No problem. So how to put a project, how to give the answers in a project, all these things I can explain. No issues. No issues. And daily timings are 1 hour, 10 minutes. Class will be there. This is same for a happening for a 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Class will be there. Next 15 to 20 minutes for doubts. If any doubts or any interview questions, we will daily wise we will discuss the interview questions. Like if you are teaching one concept, there itself we will discuss the interview questions. What is the in which direction the interview questions will be asked. Like if you are discussing a injection, set dependence injection, what is the difference between the setter and constructor injection? So in setter injection, which object will be created? Dependent object or target object? So this type of interview questions, there itself we will discuss it like that, like that. Okay, this is the answer. Let me stop the recording. You can ask your doubts if you have any doubts. If you have any doubts, you can ask it. Save it. What's our, this is a, yeah, where I need to open, close it. Yes, let me stop recording.